welcome to Razz Reviews. Today I'm going to be reviewing Dunkirk. Christopher Nolan is one of my personal favorite directors, and every time he has a new film out, I get so excited to see it, and I'm rarely disappointed by what he does. This was one of my most anticipated releases of this year, and my god, this film did not disappoint. What a movie! It is such a cinematic movie and representation of a real-life event that many people know, but this film takes such an insanely amazing approach at telling the story of this event. There's actually not a lot of story in this movie. The characters aren't explored that much and the plot is very minimal, but this has allowed the film to be more than just a story. It's more of a vignette. There's a lot that I liked about this movie, and I can't wait to tell you about the top 3 things that I liked about Dunkirk. Number 3, the realistic representation of war. Essentially, a war film has one job that it needs to do right, and that is to make us feel what it feels like to be at war. And Dunkirk offers one of the most amazing, breathtaking war sequences that I've ever seen on film. Most films rely on extreme imagery and violence and gore to bring about the horrors of war, but this film didn't take that route, where it really represented the chaos, randomness and confusion of war and put you as the viewer in such a tense and emotionally jarring seat where you just sit there and you don't know what's happening and what's going on, but you feel tense and uncomfortable, like any minute anything can happen. Even the different stories of the different characters themselves is told in a non-linear way, and different things happen from different perspectives at different times, and that's kind of really maybe what war is, where random things happen and later on you find out that all these things happen at the same time or at the same place. I was at the edge of my seat and uncomfortable the whole time, in a good way. I just felt like I was looking everywhere to check when a shell is gonna fall or when someone's gonna get shot or an explosion is gonna happen. It's just so breathtaking, I can't even explain it. Of course, the realism in the visuals has contributed so much to the height of the realism in this film. Christopher Nolan relies on real ships, extras, and real-life locations to really put you in there. The shots of the beach and the ships and the ocean and the views from the airplanes was just... The number 2 thing I liked about Dunkirk was the sound design. Speaking of looking around for things that are happening, this film's sound design is something to behold. I mean, it's too early to really say, but I would think this film should get an Oscar because, my god, what brought this film and this war to life for me was the sound design in the film. I've heard gunshots before, and this is the most accurate sound of gunshots that I've ever heard in my life. And every time shots were fired in the film, I flinched. And that's a lot of flinching. And it's not just the quality of the sound effects of what guns sound like, what explosions sound like, also the sound design and the distribution of sound. I was sitting in the theater feeling like planes were flying from behind me, shells were exploding on my left side. Like, I really felt the sense of direction and the chaos and the fear and anxiety from the way that the sound was distributed and designed in this film. It was absolutely masterful. And combined with that, you have an incredible soundtrack by Hans Zimmer. And I really feel that Hans Zimmer has actually challenged himself in this film, because most of his soundtracks are very orchestral and large, and they have these big epic crescendos. Here, it was a very different style for him. He did this thing where it's like a consistent sound that would continue looping over and over and over and over and over again throughout the scenes. And then when the action swelled, the sound also kind of became more intense and more heightened, and it just like created this insane sense of anxiety. So it was minimal and also effective. The number 1 thing I liked about Dunkirk is the directing. Christopher Nolan, who here kind of gave me some Stanley Kubrick vibes, takes storytelling to a whole new level in this film. He breaks so many conventions by making this film the way it is. The most unique thing about this film for me is the fact that it didn't feel like it was a 3-act story. There wasn't a beginning and a middle and an end. The whole time it felt like it was building up to something, like the sequences or the action or the intensity just swells up and becomes very intense, and then it just goes down, and then it swells up again, and then it just goes down. It just felt like these waves of intensity and action just washing over you as you watch the movie. It was a very strange yet magnificent experience. Just like great directors before him, Christopher Nolan here offers us a space to question what war means to the people that are in it and what affects the warriors and the soldiers that are there. And I thought that was really philosophical and beautiful and very difficult to achieve. And at the same time, the film wasn't just like a slow burn where you sit there and you question things and you think about philosophies. No, it actually was very intense, very hyperactive, but at the same time it was silent and it was quiet and it was suffocating, and it was also very intense and frightening. All these things came together so seamlessly. I don't even know how he did it, but it's definitely commendable, and I think he did such a beautiful job at directing this film and giving it such a masterful, beautiful, artistic touch. This is gonna be a little tough and I'm gonna get nitpicky as I talk about the top 3 things I didn't really like about Dunkirk. Number 3, lack of blood. This film was very intense and it never felt like a PG-13 film for me. However, at the same time, I was a little let down by the lack of blood and gore. Like I said, I liked that the film didn't rely on violent images to give me the horrors of war. I get that. But also at the same time, it's something that's to be expected and I felt like it was kind of a missing ingredient. I would have liked to see a little bit more blood and a little bit more violence in a war film, just to amp up the stakes a little bit more and to have the effectiveness be just a little bit better. Again, this is very nitpicky here. Like, I didn't feel like, oh my god, it's not bloody, oh, it's terrible. No, but it's just that if there's something that I felt was missing in terms of flavor, it's just a little bit more violence that you'd expect in a war scene or a war film. The number 2 thing I didn't like about Dunkirk was that it was an exhausting film. Like I said, this film makes you sit there and go through the ringer as you experience this horrific event from different perspectives and different views. And by the time it's over, the amount of intensity and anxiety that you experience just leaves you absolutely exhausted and drained. There's actually no breathing room in this film. I never felt like I'm okay to sit back and eat my popcorn. I just felt like any second now, things are about to go down. And it's a great experience, yes, and it's very unique, but it might be a little too heavy and too jarring for some people. The number 1 thing I didn't like about Dunkirk is the lack of emotional connection. This is my real gripe with this movie and what stops it from being absolutely perfect. Sometimes for the sake of realism and art, you have to sacrifice certain things. And I felt this film kind of sacrificed an emotional connection between the audience and the characters of this film. I didn't find myself connecting with any particular character, nor rooting for anybody to survive. I was just sitting there, watching this thing unfold, feeling the experience as if I was there myself. Which is a very interesting way of watching a film. It's very personal because you feel you want to get out of Dunkirk. In a sense, it doesn't make the ending or the resolution of the character arcs as impactful as the other events that happen in the film. But like I said, nothing comes easy, nothing comes cheap. The amount of realism and the fact that yes, when soldiers are running around in a war trying to get out of a war zone or a disaster zone, they don't have time to get to know each other and look at the photo of their wife waiting at home and the kids. I love that these moments didn't happen, but at the same time, something was a little missing in terms of that emotional connection, but that's really pretty much what kept this film from being perfect, because otherwise this movie was incredible. It was a beautiful piece of cinema. I thought it was absolutely amazing and impressive and beautiful and powerful. It might not be for everyone and it might not work for everyone, but if you're a fan of war films, this movie is gonna be like born to you. And this is definitely one of those films that absolutely deserves buying a ticket and watching it in IMAX, because it's a visual spectacle. It's absolutely brilliant filmmaking, and for that reason I'm gonna give Dunkirk a 9 out of 10. So, have you seen Dunkirk? Was it an intense experience for you? Let me know in the comment section, and as always, like, share, and subscribe, and don't forget to ask what you'd like me to review for you next. See ya!